On this episode of Forever Young, important questions you need to ask before you enter into any contract.
Forever Young would like to acknowledge the support of these sponsors. The Fun and Fitness Travel Club, which began at a neighborhood pool in Fairfax County, has become a nationwide travel club for active adults. Led by certified fitness instructors Jim Seeley and Cynthia New, this dues-free organization travels worldwide on cruises and land tours, offering members free daily exercise classes in water aerobics, Tai Chi, yoga, deck walking, ballroom dancing, and sing-alongs. The website is fun-fitness.com and the phone number is 703-827-0414.
Hello and welcome to Forever Young. A few months ago, we had a guest who was very, very popular. We've heard from you in your emails, your phone calls, and coming to our monthly luncheons. You told us you want to hear more about how to be an educated consumer and make very good decisions, knowing the kinds of questions to ask before signing on the dotted line. So, according to your request, we have invited back on our show Lee Cutler. Welcome back.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
There's so many services and products out there, some of which are very good and beneficial in terms of improving quality of life, but there are also some things people need to be aware of and some pitfalls to avoid. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, Jim, I also come from a marketing background, and one of the things that we need to be aware of, those of us who are getting in this market of older people or senior market, is that we're a very large market, and
getting larger every day.
Larger every day, and the products and services that are targeting us are proliferating. Okay, and on the other side of the coin, the people who are marketing and developing these products are looking at what they call a huge senior market, and it's going to be going through what they call inside is a wealth transfer. All of this money that's been collected is going to either go into products and services, or it's going to transfer to the next generation. And so we are at the top of the list for the people who are selling these products and services. What can we come up with to tap this market? And there's a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of money that's put into product development to tap this market and to get market share. So thinking of yourself as market share is a little bit maybe uncomfortable, but indeed you are.
And so many of these potential customers often look at something that seems like it's just too good to be true, and they think, oh, this person or company that's offering me this product or service, they're doing me a real favor.
Well, part of the effort that goes into developing these products and services is psychological. What does this group of people, what does this market need, what do they want, and what are they afraid of? These are powerful motivators, so what can we come up with to address their needs, their wants, and their fears? So therefore, you have a proliferation of products that sound great to you because they're designed to address your needs, your wants, and your fears. It's another issue of if it's too good to be true, then maybe you need to take a closer look.
So let's talk about some of these, and it really is kind of almost like walking a tightrope or almost like a minefield sometimes walking through, because like I said, there are very good products and services out there for seniors that are going to improve quality of life. So it's not like we can just say, no, we're not going to have any part of this. So let's talk first of all about someone who's looking at a continuing care retirement community, and they're saying, okay, at this stage of my life or at some relatively near future time, I may be needing the services of a continuing care retirement community. What are the kind of questions people should have before entering into a contract?
I think people really need to take a hard look at whether or not it's inevitability. It's an inevitable situation. There's something now, there's a new movement of communities that address the fact that seniors may not want to leave their homes. They may not want to go to the next step. There's an acronym, I think it's called NORC, naturally occurring retirement communities, where people are trying to find ways to bring in some of the services and products into the homes that they're living in, rather than think in terms of ending this portion of my life and going somewhere else to the next level. However, to answer your question specifically about continuing care communities, These are communities that people leave their own homes for, okay? They take their asset bases to these communities and intend to live there for perhaps the rest of their lives. But they enter into contracts in these communities, and they're contracts for services, and they're services that are on graduated levels. There may be several contracts. If people aren't aware of what contract addresses which service, that as they get older and they need more help from the community, the level of service increases and the agreement changes. So rather than looking at the first agreement, I would suggest that people make sure they understand there could be multiple agreements, and look at the last agreement and look at that with a very critical eye, because that's the point at which you would be least able to be your own advocate.
So the time to look at that would be way before you would need to make any changes that may not even be possible later down the road.
Yes, and then compare it against some of the benefits and some of the promises that are made to you when you go in initially, in terms of if it's a refundable deposit down at the end of the road, at the end of the contract. Well, maybe that deposit might have to be used for your care. So you might think, boy, what a good deal going in when I'm healthy. But when you're not healthy and you look at the contract and the restrictions on your asset base, it might not be the good deal that you thought it was going in up front.
And what people might be surprised to hear is that that deposit that you've put down, which is usually in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, can be tapped into sometimes against people's will.
Well, that's part of the contract that you have to read. And I'm not saying we all have to be lawyers, but, you know, looking at things with a critical eye and looking at the fine print and asking yourself, well, what if this happened? What if I wasn't able to make decisions? Is there something in the agreement that puts the power of decision-making in the hands of the facility, okay, and out of my hands, even if I'm not able to make my own decisions? Is there something in the agreement that would preclude my advocate, my child, my family member from stepping in making decisions for me? Is there enough teeth in that contract that says I might have to go, or my advocate might have to go to the courts to fight over their ability to make decisions for me because of competency laws that might be worked into the small print of the contracts?
Okay, any other questions people would need to ask before entering into these kind of agreements with continuing care retirement communities?
I'd say it's all in the contract and it's all in the fine print. Make sure that you have all of the contracts, make sure you understand them, make sure you have a competent person, attorney, or someone who's your advocate to make sure that you see the downside.
And sometimes time can be a wonderful ally, where you take time to mull over a contract, check it out with different people, with trusted people, with the adult children that these people have as well.
Well, there was a case on the news here within the last week that many people may have heard about. It revolved around a couple who had purchased into an over 55 community, thinking that was going to be their home for the duration, the long term, and one of their children was unable to care for one of their grandchildren. So the grandchild had no option but to live with the grandparents, and the grandparents were locked in a contract that prohibited the child from living in their home. And you combine that with the market we have in real estate today. They're in a restricted living environment, they're in a down market, and they have a small child to care for. A very difficult position to be in, but how could they have anticipated it?
And those what-if scenarios sometimes are not what people considering when they are in the warm, fuzzy glow of all the wonderful benefits and amenities and features of these really nice communities.
A sales brochure and a tour of the facility, you know, given by a public relations manager is not the same as what's in the contract.
Yeah, there is a very different, and we talked about this last time you were here, but it bears repeating, that this idea of shoving a contract under someone's nose and saying this is just a formality and this pretty much repeats what I've told you may or may not be true.
Well, you've got the smoked salmon in one hand and the pen in the other hand.
Right. All right, well, let's move on to talk about long-term care insurance policies. And this is something that's an issue for many people that are entering into these type of agreements. People might be watching this show What are some questions that it's important for them to ask in that case?
Well, I'm glad you bring this up because this has been a project of mine I've been working on for a few years and watching the development of these products and watching how they're sold to people. And as I
Let's talk about long-term care insurance policies. And this is an issue that many people are looking at. What are some very important questions that people need to be asking before they enter into this kind of an agreement?
Oh, there are so many questions, and I've been working on this for some time and watching the development and the evolution of these policies. They've been around for a long time, for a very long time, and they've gone through different transitions. Used to be called nursing home insurance, which is probably more accurate than long-term care because that's such a broad manufactured term. When looking at these plans, it's helpful to use business terms instead of the emotional terms. Like long-term care, insurance, and care management, those kinds of things, because these are actually contracts, okay? And they're contracts. They are contracts that promise to pay you sometime in the future. Okay, and basic inflation says that money today is worth more than money tomorrow. So this is a promise to pay you back benefits. Okay, so it essentially sells you a coupon for benefits that it's going to give to you in the future with future inflated dollars. And when you assess the basic contract in terms of what they promise you, what you have to pay, there's some elementary math that just doesn't necessarily make sense. Oftentimes, these contracts give you what they call is an inflation protection factor. Well, long-term care is such a broad issue that it's hard to define what that inflation factor should be. And if it's insufficient, okay, if it's not enough, and over the 20 years that you own the policy, the health care costs are forever rising this way, and the benefit amount, okay, is diminishing this way, then what you have is an offset against an ever-rising cost.
Right, because if it's protected only at 5%, but the real costs are rising 10 to 15 or more percent, then that gap continues to widen.
Continues to grow, and we all know that health care costs don't rise at the level of inflation,
they go
5%,
much higher.
4%. And the other issue is that this is facility reimbursement. So if you're in a facility for what is custodial care at this point we're talking about, there's nothing to control the cost of the facility, okay? If the facility makes a capital investment, they put on a new wing, they raise their prices for whatever reasons, that has nothing to do with the contract that you have been in for the last 20 years. And on the other hand is that if you look at the money that you put into the contract and say, what other options might there be for me to use this money in the event that I need care later on, some kind of care, you have, in putting it in a contract, you may have eliminated your right to choose options that may be better for you in the future.
All right. Any other questions people need to ask before entering into long-term care insurance policies?
Yes, I think a very important one is that many of these policies have a clause or they have a sheet that says this is not a Medicare supplement plan. And this is a very tricky concept because it implies that it doesn't pay your Medicare deductibles. But it's much broader than that. And in the discussions I've had with people in the business, it actually means that if you are using your Medicare benefit, if you're in claim with Medicare Part A, which is the benefit that gives you hospitalization and then it gives you care afterwards in a facility for up to 100 days, if you're in claim with Medicare, then these contracts, or the ones that I've reviewed, don't apply. So that means that your Medicare benefit has to exhaust before you can even put in a claim on some of these policies. And the tricky thing is that you can go in and out of Medicare claims. You can break your leg again and go through another 100 days where you're in claim with Medicare. So what happens is the opportunity for you to claim benefits under these policies can be very segmented, and as a whole it could add up to very, very few days or a very short time that you were even eligible to receive the benefit.
So all these years you might have paid large sums in premiums, and then when it's time to collect, there are all kinds of exclusions, and no, we don't cover that because it's covered over here.
Exactly. And also the idea that you could be paying these policies for over 20 years. And of course you're going to pay less when you're younger, and I think they'll tell you that, and more when you're older, or one of the reasons they try to get you to buy it when you're younger is the idea that you'll pay less over time. But the likelihood is that over time, as you get older, your premiums will rise, even though you'll hear that they can't increase your individual premiums, they can increase the premiums of the group that you belong to. And if that policy that you have purchased is only offered to people in similar age categories as you, as that group rises, okay, the ability to increase those premiums rises, because all of the company has to do is put in an application to the government and says, I can't meet my cost, and they can get an approval to raise your premiums.
Sounds like those low introductory rates that we hear about those credit cards, and then the low introductory time period expires, and then you're stuck with a much higher rate that you didn't sign up for.
Well, you're a customer in buying these products. You're not an owner. You know, think what the owners of the company receive in terms of benefits from the company, in terms of profitability from the company. You as a customer are paying the profits to the owners.
Let's talk about home service benefits, Lee Cutler, and tell us what we need to be aware of in this area.
Well, in-home care has become a topic of note because there's so much information out there on various things that you can purchase. Levels of insurance, long-term care insurance often have an in-home care feature, okay, that applies or should apply if you're able to trigger the benefits of the policy. But it's one of these areas where people think they know what they're going to get. And never having experienced it before, never having used, say, a home care agency, people think they know what they're going to get. But that's very different than what actually happens in terms of having someone come into your home who may not be from your country, who may have difficulty communicating in your language, who doesn't know your home, who doesn't know where your medications are kept, who doesn't know how to use your kitchen. So you have what essentially is a person coming into your home that needs to be trained. They need to be trained in your home, they need to be trained about you, and the reason that you've contracted to have these people in your home is that you need help with these areas. So I try to give people the idea that, well, think from the other side of the desk here. Here's an area that you haven't had any experience with. Here's your level of expectations from people who are strangers, people who don't know you. How productive are those people going to be the first hour or two they're in your home? And what is the likelihood of those same people coming to your home if you need them on a regular basis? Understand that you are using people who are contracted from an agency. And the agency has certain overhead, and they have certain business objectives that they want to meet. And one of the objectives from a home health agency is that they don't want too much personal interaction or too much of a relationship forming between you and the people they send in on an agency basis, on an agency call. I can speak from personal experience in this matter because I took care of my husband for the years before he died, and we did have both home care and we did have institutional care. And continuity of relationship is always a challenge, and it was a challenge because relationships would start between your loved one and the agency person, and the agency is more concerned that the continuity of service continues rather than a relationship develops, and then their piece of it is
right. Their biggest fear,
with.
I'm sure, and this is true of many agency-type relationships, is that they'll cut out the middleman, which is the agency, and enter into a contract. But,
right.
but see, so this is a very interesting point, because what you're saying then is every time they send a new person from the agency, that person needs to get trained. And if this person who needs help was in a position to go around training these people, they wouldn't need the help in the first place. So it's a very important point to raise.
Well, a suggestion is, you may spend 20 years buying a policy that you think covers this level of care, but would we spend $50 to hire an agency person to come in so we can see what they bring to us in terms of what they could bring to the party? Because you're much better able to assess it when you don't need help than you are when you do need help. Another point I'd like to bring up is that Medicare does provide home health services. When you go into Medicare Claim A and you're in the hospital and you come home, if your doctor deems it medically necessary, Medicare will provide this service, and they will send agency people in to help you.
Let's talk about investments. And we keep hearing last few years especially about mutual funds as the great cure-all and the idea of minimizing risk by putting all your money in mutual funds. What are some pros and cons about investing in these mutual funds?
Well, you're absolutely right. They are an incredibly huge business, and they do a great deal of marketing, and part of that marketing is trying to make people think that they are very safe and it's the easy way out. Mutual funds are sophisticated instruments. They are companies designed to make a profit for the people who own them, all right? And the people who purchase shares of mutual funds are essentially the customers who help deliver the profits for the people who own them. One of the pitfalls of investing in mutual funds for seniors, people who are probably into their retirement years, is that oftentimes, unless they're thoroughly understood, you can be set up for unexpected taxes at the end of the year, capital gains exposure, and dividend exposure that you may not necessarily understand going into it. I had a conversation with an elderly woman the other day who wanted someone to manage her money for her, self-professed, I know very little about my money, take this for me and manage it for me. And then the end of the year, she was hit with a huge tax exposure because capital gains are taxable events. So even though you didn't know that your mutual fund was selling a particular block of equity, they sold it, and if they made a gain, you have to pay taxes for it. Even if the value of your mutual fund would diminish, you lose money and you're paying taxes. Oftentimes people don't understand why that would happen. I think that, as I said, mutual funds are sophisticated investments, and oftentimes people go into them not fully understanding what the risks could be, and they walk away from investments that they do understand. I'm not advocating any particular investment. I'm not licensed to do so, and I don't do that, but I will say that people should stay with things that they understand, especially as they get older in years, rather than move to things that are more complicated and increase the risk of diminishing their asset base.
And isn't it true if they go into one of these mutual funds, they don't really own the stocks?
No, you own shares in the mutual fund, and the value of the mutual fund is held up by investments in the stock market, cash, other kinds of vehicles, okay? But you don't own a percentage of the company as you do if you are a direct investor. If you buy a share in ABC company, you own a percentage interest in that company. If that company makes money, you make money. If that company pays a dividend, it comes directly to you. You have a choice of when to buy or sell. But with mutual funds, it is a basket of various products, okay, that hold up the value. And your interest in a mutual fund is not a negotiable interest, okay? You have a redeemable interest in the value of the fund. So you have a coupon that's good for a certain dollar value, versus a stock, which is a percentage, an ownership percentage of that company.
And obviously you have no say. You're not going to be invited to any sort of shareholders meeting if you're in a mutual fund.
No, you don't. You do not participate in the actual companies when you own shares of mutual funds.
All right, well, we're pretty much out of time. Any final thoughts about anything we've talked about today?
No, I'm very happy to be here, and I just hope that people realize that life is becoming more and more complicated because we, as we age, are indeed perceived as market share, and there are so many products coming our way, and it does behoove us to be very, very cautious and to fully understand where we put our money before we do it.
And to help navigate our way through these sometimes treacherous waters, you have provided us with some websites, many of them government websites and other resources that we are placing on our website, foreveryoungtv.org, and you are invited to click on the links page of www.foreveryoungtv.org and take advantage of these wonderful resources. So thank you so much, Lee Cutler. You're a wonderful resource yourself, and you are helping seniors so much to improve the quality of their lives and avoid making mistakes that they could come to regret later. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Somebody advised you good not to production facilities provided by Fairfax Public Access, Fairfax, Virginia.